What's up, dudes? Got a buddy joining me here in a minute. All right, I'm waiting for buddy to get on. Matt's going to join me. We got some stuff I want to talk about, as opposed to as it pertains to weapons handling, and I'll do the air quotes, in the real world. Are we doing the right things on the range? Are we handling weapons appropriately? And or are we just being fucking scared? And are our we're handling the weapons what's actually necessary? Let me see if I can get this to work. Why doesn't it work? There we go. Hey, what's up, man?
What's up?
So I'm just going to kick it off. We talked briefly on the phone, probably about 5 minutes before we went live. I just wanted to give them kind of a primer on the things that we were going to talk about. So I'm just going to kick this off. I get a lot of body cams footage sent to me. Guys want me to comment on it. I don't usually comment unless I've actually interviewed someone or I know about it, and it would make sense for me to do it. I just kind of leave that to the internet to do on its own. What I'm seeing a lot of on these BWCs, and it's a weapon. I look at it as a weapons handling thing, and I look at it as a competency thing, and a confidence thing. Dudes have their guns out, and my question is, why is the gun out right now? And it's like, well, if I got to shoot somebody, okay, then is it a speed thing? Is that the reason you feel like you need to have the gun out? I see guys driving cars with a gun out, a handgun in their hand, or as a passenger in a car, they've got a handgun in their hand and they're driving around. And some of it can make sense in my head, where you're driving down the street and you see the dude and you're like, hey, I think that's the dude. Look, he's got a gun in his hand, and the passenger would get his gun up to do a jump on this guy or to get out and contact him. I can put a little leeway there. But when you're just literally out looking for someone, when we have a gun out because we think we're going to a call that might include some kind of violence, I think you're actually making it harder for you to do your job, especially as a driver. If you're driving with a gun in your hand, you're doing both of those things at a pretty much shitty level. Like, you're the old lady driving to the grocery store capabilities driving. And I know we all drive our car with one hand, but I've never been able to do any kind of performance driving, or the many, many chases I've been in where I've just got one hand on the wheel and I'm actively chasing somebody. I want to be in control of that car and feel what it's doing. Seeing guys do that with a gun in their hand drives me nuts. And then that goes right into the same question I have, is even if you do see the dude out your window and your window's down, and we're not talking about shooting through glass, the normal distances that I've seen people and contacted them or identified them from a vehicle is like 25 and beyond yards. You're like, that's the dude. So now my question would be, is how good are you at shooting seated at 25 yards across your body out of an open window, or have you ever done it before? It's the same thing I see when guys have their gun out when it's not imminently necessary, or they really need, they can absolutely justify, like, hey, I'm here's the dude right there, he's not acting the right way and I've got a gun out to cover him, when they're just out there looking for something and they don't have a crime. My thing is, I don't see a lot of cops training to shoot in that manner. I see a lot of guys holding a gun down by their holster, or they've got their hands separated and they just have the gun here looking. And I've never seen guys doing reps to put that shooting package together, that grip together, to build that grip. But what guys have a ton of reps doing is from the holster, drawing, building a grip, and putting rounds on targets. So my question would be, if you're better at that, and I think it's pretty objective, like, watch someone shoot, draw, shoot, draw, shoot. Guys are pretty good at it, regardless of the target's location. They know how to do that. That's where their subconscious gets the reps, as little reps as they get. I don't see guys with the gun behind the leg ever practicing it on the range. That's like an old school LAPD thing. I was taught to do that when I was brand new. But having the gun out in these odd positions for searching, when you're not actually effectively building a grip, I think puts guys at a disadvantage. And the only reason I can think they have the gun out in that moment is they don't have confidence in their abilities, or they have an unjustifiable fear of, I won't be fast enough, I won't be accurate enough. And I think by doing those things that make you less accurate, it's compounding everything. Does that make sense? Or did Matt freeze on me? I think Matt froze. Let me see if I can add him back. There you are.
Yep, sorry.
I think you froze through half of that. I don't know if you had even got a chance to hear what I was talking about, but
No, I did, and it does make sense. I think it is it's very much tied to like confidence and competence kind of go hand in hand in those situations. When guys aren't confident in their skills, whether it's they actively are know they might not be able to deliver, or they just think they can, but maybe they haven't been in the situation before, they haven't been under that pressure, then a lot of that plays into kind of well, I'll just be ready and put the gun down here. But I think you're right on the money with guys do have more reps practicing from the holster than from like the gun down at their side.
Yeah, I work at a range, and I don't ever see guys out there doing that. I've never driven by like one of our bays and seen, steel up and guys are shooting it. I've never seen one of them just standing there with the gun and then bringing it up. Like you'll see people like a low ready, and you'll see people mostly drawing. Like they're working their draws like crazy. But I've never seen them hold it behind their leg. I've never seen them walk slowly and then have a target called out, and then they have to engage it with their hands separated. Another thing I see a lot is, and this is just an opinion, the only excusable thing to have in your hands if you're going to search with a gun is a flashlight and a gun, or just a flashlight, or just a gun. Pick one of those two things or both, but don't add other items. Don't pick items up. Don't have a pen in your hand. Learn how to discard what's not needed, because it's been proven time and time again that, and I can't remember what the theory or the reasoning behind it was, the psychological part, but it's like, this is what's in my hand. I'm just going to do what my subconscious does, which is bring everything together. And there's been tons of cops being involved in shootings, and I'm sure citizens as well, with pens in their hand and just putting a grip together that's just a complete mess. Holding entire clipboards, trying to put their hands together with a clipboard and shooting. And it's my position. I believe that your body recognizes that the shit's not right, and it starts to induce a little bit more panic. Like your body's trying to make sense of what's happening here. It's got a pen in the fingers, and it's like, hold on, time out. This is not our grip. It knows when your grip's a piece of shit anyway. But it's that inability to recognize when it's happening that's, I think, detrimental to us. Like I think that's a part of training that's missing. But it's the overall, are we not confident as law enforcement officers in our ability to deliver force? I know our egos and our outward appearance says that we are. But and I just think this, when we display that, when the guns are out almost prematurely, I think that shows the lack of confidence.
I think it does. I mean, I think there's a lot of different things that go in the lack of confidence, and I think that this goes back to a competence and confidence. Like those things are tied so closely together. And guns are out, even when the guns are out, and someone presents himself as a threat. Hey, this guy's going to get lethal force. They still shoot and miss significantly, right? Even to where, we've all seen the shootings, 6, 7, 8 rounds per cop, 2 cops, and the guy still runs away.
Oh yeah.
Right. Unhit. So it is a confidence, but I think, it's the big elephant in the room in the training side. This all goes back to training. It's like from day one of how they're taught, and then also where the emphasis is put on in training now. You can even blame fucking social media for a lot of it. Like what guys are more interested in equipment than they are in getting good with the equipment they have. That would be number 1. 2, I was just watching you talk about guys not recognizing something's right. It was a body cam footage where guys shooting goes to slide lock, still hasn't hit anything, reloads, and for the rest of his body cam footage, his gun is at slide lock while he's pulling the trigger.
I had that video sent to me.
Never recognizes that it's at slide lock. That is an over the top incompetence, right? And I know they'll say, well, it's contextual. He was stressed out, and I believe it. I believe he was very stressed out. But also, that's why I guarantee you, or I not guarantee you, but I would believe that dude never fucking trains. He shoots the minimum amount of rounds that he has to shoot and plays with his gun the minimum amount of time. And then on the day when he needs it, that's it. You know, and then thank God 30 of his other friends are there, all with probably similar levels of confidence and competence, you know, and it's a wonder that more mistakes don't happen. You know, especially when you start to see situations like that. There was one, I believe it was in Texas, where lots of guys are surrounded a car at night, and I mean, just volumes and volumes of fire. And I think they were in like maybe an industrial area. Have you seen that video?
I might have. I can't recall it.
Yeah, they end up like you've got probably 10, 15 guys dumping magazines into this car, you know, and I don't even think the guy ultimately ended up dying, but they still, at that point, you've shot so much into this car. Now you have a SWAT team come out to approach the car. And it's like, none of the 30 officers are there have the skills to be able to approach this car. Like,
yes, the car thing reminds me, and I'm pretty sure I've seen that video, but what it reminds me of, and I think it was Ben talking about it on the range, and I've viewed this in vehicles before at shootings and other things. When you see the target as a whole, when you see, let's just use an IPSC target. When you see a USPSA target as a whole target, generally your bullets are going to be in that target, all over it. But I think the same thing happens when a car. People see a car, and that's why the car is literally covered in bullet holes. So they're not shooting at a very specific point within the car. They're not shooting at it for any other reason than to deliver fire at the vehicle that maybe our little monkey brains perceives it as the threat because bullets are coming out of it or whatever. But again, they're not delivered to a specific point. They're delivered to the whole target. Is it, you know what I'm talking about? Like the target can be that big, a vehicle. Like you're shooting at the back of the car. My sight's on the car, or the target's the car. My red dot's on the car. I'm just going to pull the trigger.
Yeah, and I think you can make a good argument for probably a lot of the shooting in those instances is just pile-on shooting.
Yeah.
You don't even see what you're shooting at, but your perception of a threat is the other three guys that may or may not have saw them that are shooting. And then there's more videos of that where it's kind of very telling on the skill level of all the guys involved. But they walk away from it, and I think the organization, everybody looks at it as a major threat or a major success. Right. Like, hey, good job.
Everybody went home. Right.
Yeah, and it's, you know, I mean, that is a major success when everybody goes home, but it's also no one wants to address, like, there's not going to be any after action about how that went down or, you know, how it played out, what could have possibly happened, you know. But I also think too that like agencies just don't care. You know, I believe rather than fix the root problems and make guys more confident, make them more competent, get a better police force, they're just willing to, hey, what we've got's working, and I rather stroke a 7-figure settlement check than a 5-figure training check.
Right. And I think Jake talked about it. It's what I want to know is I have a feeling what I think is appropriate for me to train me. And I would think I have an appropriate opinion of what's going to be effective for most of the people that I work with and train. How do we get people to understand that, like, the sooner the heart, like the things that we mess up, like how do I get mad at a guy driving around with a gun in his hand when we never told him not to do that or showed him why it's a disadvantage? Like, think of all the things you do really shitty now that you have a gun in your hand, like opening the door. It just got harder because that's not how you normally open a door. Because now you got a seatbelt, you're trying to run it like this. God forbid you go forward and grab it. Like, you just made everything in life harder to do other than shooting. But because you're not in a normal presentation, you're not doing it in a normal way that you train, or you've never experienced it, now you suck at that too. So you're making everything harder. You're making it harder to deal with people because now you have to put it away. You're making it harder to get out of the car. You're making it harder to maneuver around your environment and grab a tree to move around, or just run. I can't run as well with a gun in my hand. It's off-bound. Like, it's harder to deal with. So you're making everything harder, and then you throw on top of it, yes, the stress of a shooting. The guy's actually firing a gun. It's very loud. They're used to shooting with muffs on, and now it's a little louder, but I didn't hear it, and all these other different things you hear. Like, how do we get them to start? How do we train people? Or let me phrase it a different way. When I see cops train, I think they're doing the best they can with what they know. They get online, they get up there, they go to the steel range, and they draw and fire one on a piece of steel, and then they put the gun away. Or they'll draw and they'll shoot the entire magazine at the piece of steel, and they'll get 10 hits out of 15 or whatever. And they're like, sweet, that was good. But they don't know how to do anything different. But everything I've ever seen in reality is different than that. It involves movement. It involves target movement. It involves a lead up to it and a build up. So how do we find those small skills where we can kind of, like, you talk about just bar hop. Let's just do bar hop. Now your body's getting used to moving in a very controlled manner, but at least it's getting used to doing it. Entering positions, exiting positions. Like, I've been talking a bunch. What do you think?
No, I think that if the default answer is that guys are just doing, well, that's all they know, like that, nowadays that has to be a cop-out, right? That's also somebody that's not interested in training or getting better. There's so much information out there for free. There's so much, 20 bucks for a book. If the information is there if you want it. The problem with that is you put the work back on that individual, and that's where it falls off. Like, for the vast majority, all the guys you see on the social media world that are like cops that are training, or this cop started training, got good, now he has a training company. Unfortunately, those guys are the exception when you look at the entire, police force of the country, or even take your department. And you guys have quite a high number of dudes, from talking to you, that come to the range regularly, that take advantage of, just that Phoenix area and everything that can contribute to you getting better at shooting, with matches, access to, some of the best shooters in the country live there. But that's still, what would you estimate that number is? 50 dudes?
Oh yeah, I'd say about 50 dudes.
50
total.
dudes out of a police force of what, 1,300?
Like almost 3,000.
That's nothing.
Yeah.
That's whatever.
Yeah, that's what's frustrating about it, right? Like, I want to find ways, like, we can use these platforms to get guys and just go, hey, look, gun handling. Yeah, I get it, the shooting part. That's a cool plate carrier, nice helmet. Your shooting is pretty good. But the gun handling in general, when you're not on the range doing it, tell me if this analogy works, because a friend of mine is a trainer. I don't know where he got it from. He said, all I need you to do to find out what kind of shape you're in is have you lay down on the ground and then get up. Just lay flat on your back. Okay, now get up. And they said they can tell a ton about a person's basic fitness level, their athleticism, and all that, just by the way they get up off the ground. If you see them kind of like that, they don't even know how to get off the ground. And it's like a cop. Like, what I would love to do is I can probably tell you how good a shooter someone is. You may share the same opinion. If I gave them a gun, say, hey, here's a mag, load this, and then carry it over there for me. Just by watching them load the gun and carry it over somewhere, you can get a pretty good picture about how good this person's going to shoot. Does that make sense?
I agree. Yeah. How comfortable they are, if they even have a process for themselves on how they load and unload or make ready. But to me, it's, you say that and it's like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. But that is such a basic fucking skill that you would think you went through a police academy, that this is something that's ingrained.
Right,
And I think the easy answer too is you have to look at the training community as a whole. Like, where are they getting information from? How many former, insert unit here type dudes are not focusing on hard skills? It's more of like a mindset or whatever. Hey, we don't even care if you're going to shoot. Now we're going to talk about fighting with a gun in your hand.
Right.
I mean, there's how many courses is that a thing, right? Where it's maybe a little bit of live fire, most of it sims where you're just fighting. And I get it that is a skill that guys need. The combatives piece to it, the defensive, the offensive. They got to be able to do certain things, but there's no thought into, can that guy actually shoot before we start layering all this other shit on top. And
yeah,
I think if I only had 20 minutes a day to train, it's not going to be 20 minutes doing jiu-jitsu. If I'm a cop, if that's it, I'm going to focus on, what's going to be the most difficult, right? That's going to be the shooting piece, whether it's a pistol or if you carry a rifle. Now you've got maybe 15 minutes on one, 5 minutes on the other. That's it. It's not going to be this, like, I don't give a fuck about vehicle stuff if I can't shoot, right? And that's for everybody that has a class that is, well, this is a tactics class. Well, it should have shooting in it. I hate to tell you, because learning where to stand in a fucking room, that's an hour conversation, right?
Everybody got it? Check.
You rep it out, you get used to how this technique is supposed to go under the context of a bigger tactic, procedural stuff. Those are the easy things to train. What happens when you find a bad guy and you have to deliver force to him? That's the hard part. And unfortunately, like, most cops, I don't think, do tactic stuff live fire.
No.
Maybe bigger agencies have live fire shoot houses, but I'm sure there's not a lot of access to it for all the cops. Maybe the SWAT team has the ability to go there, but still, most of the SWAT teams I run across, their training predominantly is sims on paper, right? Or they put another guy on the team in there as a role player, and they deal with that, and that's valuable. You need that. But what I see, a lot of guys, they don't have a strategy on the range that supports what they want to do in their tactics.
Right, or a program to develop the weaknesses. Yeah. Like, this is where we're lacking. Here's what we're going to work on specifically, and then that's a building block that's going to help us do this piece better. Yeah. Right. The ability to shoot while moving forward or moving laterally is going to help us on a room entry. Like, I'm not worried about your footwork. I'm not worried about where you do this and that. You know what the job is when you get in the room. Now we're going to make sure that you can actually do it while you're moving to this thing. We're going to try to support that.
That's what I would love. Me and Ben kind of explored this with going from pistol to rifle a few years ago. I would love to take, a Ben Stugger, a JJ Racaza, a Christian Seiler, and okay, you three and me will make a 4-man team. We're going to train CQB for one day.
It would be
and
dangerous.
see what the result is after that.
Yeah.
And that's where a lot of people won't believe that, but instead they will build, techniques and procedural things that support their lack of hard skill, rather than understanding that, hey, if we spend time developing these hard skills, it's going to open up the world to us in terms of what we can do with techniques. And you hear it is a confidence thing, it's a competence thing, but everybody talks about we go slow, and I know we're getting off track, but we go slow because there's no point running to your death. I get it, but you were told that from guys in the military from a completely different environment, and you just adopted it because it's easier. Right. Has nothing to do whether it's safer, because if that's the case, then every clearance just turns into a surround and call out.
Yep.
If you want it to be the safest it can be, Just surround it and call it out. Like that's the easiest thing. Or, it's just from an adversarial standpoint, you don't, the majority of the time, you're not seeing committed adversaries that are trying to win. I know there's lots of shootings, but I think if you looked at maybe a percentage of how many times you're clearing something versus how many times you clear, even patrol guys clear something and find a guy with a gun and a shootout unfolds, I would think that is a much higher percentage.
It absolutely is. And I see it on the BWCs, I see it at work, and I see it in the training where it's bad guys proned out, the guns are on them. All right, I'm going to holster and move forward. Like, I think the confidence needs to be in the ability to just, that's a threat, draw, deliver force. I think that is going to be your biggest benefit that you can get, that you hit the target and you're quick about it. The gun being out, to me, isn't the speed problem. Like, and they're just bringing it back to the idea of where they're training, right? The gun being already out isn't the advantage. It's not the advantage people think it is. Like, if you look at even a USPSA stage, right? The draw is the very beginning part of it. And if it's a draw into a big movement, it's really not playing that big a part into the whole stage. See, that you could use that argument and say, see, once the gun is out, I'm faster. But when it's a specific, like one of the classifiers where you're standing behind the wall, can't remember the damn numbers on it, but the ability to get the gun out and right to the target is how you win that. That is how you actually do well at that stage. Having your gun out and balancing here and waiting, I don't think you'd see an incredible difference in the time. I don't think you're going to see, just because the gun's out, someone's faster, because it's a predetermined outcome. What I think you're going to see happen is, if I told guys, like we call it the alert position at work, where their hand is on the gun in the holster, grip is built, and retention is engaged, but they can snap that and draw that gun out, and guys are under a second all day long, which is as fast as you're going to need to be. They're under a second out on target. Doesn't mean they can get it aimed. It doesn't mean it's going to be perfect, but the gun is out and it's ready to go. And they have those reps. Like we said before, they have more of those reps drawing than they do pulling it from behind their leg. When we put them on targets that light up and they don't know which one's going to, of the 4 or 5 are going to be a threat, one of them is going to turn red, everybody's times are the same. The accuracy for guys drawing is better. Does that make sense to people? Where you can have your gun out, cool. You can even aim it at one of the targets, but 4 of them are going to turn green and one of them is going to turn red. That's the only one you can shoot. And the dudes with the gun out still have to find it. And now they're out here snapping the gun around, which they don't practice. The guy with the gun in the holster is looking at everything. The thing turns red. He draws right to it because his eyes are there, and he presses the shot when it shows up. The accuracy is higher with the guy from the holster. I'd rather have you go hit at 1.5 than go miss, hit at 1.6. That's just kind of the way my head tries to wrap around it.
Yeah, I think it's a repetition thing. They're, more reps from the holster, where guys should, I think, if you talk about like a training pathway, the first thing you need to be able to do, outside of pulling the trigger without disrupting the sights, but if you want to develop the index, it's developing an index from transition, where the gun is out and you can look to a target from all these different attitudes, from high ready, low ready, one hand, holding on something and then doing it laterally. But all of those different attitudes, you're able to look to a target, slide the gun up there, and the gun arrives with the sights relatively lined up. That's like step one. But it's also one thing that no one does.
Nobody's doing it. I don't see people doing it.
No, it's not. It's a basic skill. It's super valuable, and from my experience in the mill, there was a lot of things that we did with pistol where the pistol was already out, right? The pistol comes out before the door opens. So indexing from transition, being able to look to a target and when in a very chaotic, very fast environment is the first skill, right? But everybody kind of looks at training backwards. And I think it's, you got to have, maybe, I think a lot of quals, though, maybe they start from the high ready or low ready and they raise it up.
Yeah, I've seen like compressed ready. We allow them to do compressed ready or low ready. And then there's other drills that are from the holster, but nothing is transitioning at all. And if that's all the training they're getting, it's it's the 45 degrees out, like the gun is about to freaking fart in their face, holding it out here, and then they're lifting it straight up into the target instead of actually, pressing straight out to it, or they're just drawing.
Yeah, I think it. I mean, we can argue and debate all day long about how to develop these skills.
Mm-hmm.
I would just just develop any skill more than what you're doing.
Yeah, that's a good point.
Whether it's shooting, drawing, gun handling, right? Be a little smart about it. Balance what you're doing live fire with what you're doing dry fire. First and foremost, please dry fire, because I think there's a lot of people that say they're dry firing a lot more than they actually are.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, I did 30 minutes today. Like, dude, I did 5 minutes today, and then I was busy at work, but I got 5 minutes in.
Yeah.
One thing I want to hit real quick, because I'm sure it's going to pop in people's heads when they watch this later. I am not saying keep your gun in your holster all the time. I'm saying if there is an imminent threat, like we are looking for an armed dude, we are on foot, and we are actively hunting them down, it makes sense to have a gun out. I'm saying when you're going to clear a building, when the neighbor called in and goes, yeah, the doors to my neighbor's house is open, and you go in to clear it, you don't know who's in there, what the crime is, especially when you're doing these huge open areas, like through a neighborhood at night. Like, you're carrying your pistol around like everybody's going to, like the boogeyman's going to jump out of a car, when you really need, and you're using a weapon light, when you really need a handheld light as the cop, right? You're in a neighborhood full of people who are going to come outside and go, what's going on? You can't light them up with your pistol light and go, I'm pretty sure that's not him. Not sure. Who are you? Put your hands up. Start screaming at everybody. It just comes back to that weapons handling thing. If it makes sense for you to have your gun out in the moment, then so be it. But get used to moving. When you move, the way you move on a search, the way you use your flashlight to search. When I see guys doing this, using their flashlight to search, have you ever even tried to put your hands together and shoot from that position when you're using it to get it up a little higher and look for stuff? And does that even make sense? I'm just asking dudes to be honest with it. Like, I've seen a lot of officers get involved in shootings from positions and doing tasks that I'm pretty confident they've never done in their life while shooting. Does that make sense? On the range.
Yeah. I mean, do you think some of that comes from maybe training that they've received in the past that drove points home? Yeah, I think we've all seen the video, the guy shooting from the car.
Yeah.
Like, just in
the guy driving down the road shooting
through his windshield, shooting
no sense in that.
Out of it. Like, I don't even, maybe he took a course where the emphasis was, hey, fighting from the car, right? And he's blurring the two things in the heat of the moment or something like that. But that's not even like a confidence, that's grossly incompetent.
Yeah.
And unaware of the possible outcomes. And I get it. You dodged 17 bullets or however many of them you shot through your windshield. But typically, if I'm driving a car with a clean, good windshield, I don't want to shoot through it and make it not a good windshield.
No, it works better that way.
Yeah, that would be counterproductive for what I'm trying to do.
Right. And I would prefer, especially if we were a two-man, if you're driving, I prefer you keep your fucking hands on the wheel and drive the car. And if anybody's going to do anything, I'll take care of it. But, like, you got one job, you might as well do it to your best ability. Don't split attention and try to drive with your gun out just because he might bail on me and I want my gun out again, right? Like, yeah. He's going to bail. Get out of the car and draw and shoot. Or get out of the car and draw or chase. Like, whatever it is you need to do. But everything comes back, I think, to a confidence thing.
Oh, it does. Yeah. I mean, when you guys are doing, high-speed driving, offensive driving, whatever you call it, is there ever a time when they're like, yeah, just throw one hand on the wheel?
No.
And that's where, if people could just understand, like, you're violating principles that shouldn't be violated, right? And I don't care if a dude is shooting at you from a car and you're chasing him and you're close, and he's shooting at you, getting hits on your car, the common sense approach to me would be, you need to back off, right? Create some distance, still maintain visual control of them, but probably not. Oh well, let me get into a two-way gunfight with them while we're driving 80 miles an hour down a residential road.
Yeah,
And I know
that one there's zero excuse for.
that's an extreme case, but it's also it goes in line with I think what you're trying to talk about is sometimes the gun's out when it shouldn't be out, and then a lot of times the gun is not out when it most certainly should be out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
That goes to another and completely different side of the fence, where it's I'm afraid to pull my gun out. I don't want to get in trouble. That whole thing.
Yeah.
If your brain is telling you this is getting sketchy, this is getting to be appropriate, right? Get the gun out. Learning to pick between those two things is where I think it gets hard. And the easy option, the easy excuse, generally seems to be get the gun out, right? Seems like the gun's always out when nobody's around. We're looking for people. And when people are around and need a gun pointed at them, the gun's staying in the holster. So I don't get why that happens either. Like, does that make sense? Like,
Yeah.
No one's around, we're looking for him, our guns are out. Now I got a guy I'm dealing with, he's got a gun in his hand, or he's screaming and yelling with a bat, and we want to keep the gun in the holster. Like, it's a pain in the ass is what it is, trying to get people to understand it. And then just to the driving part, like, I know guys, like, yes, every one of you can drive down the freeway with your knee holding the wheel, texting in one hand and drinking your coffee in the other at 80 miles an hour, and it's easy. But when you're actually pushing a car close to its limits and trying to go fast, the road gets real interactive with your steering wheel, and it's hard to control.
Hey, Chris, here's a good one from Dr. Guns, and I do not agree with is how many obvious mistakes are from a cognitive processing issue, and in quotations, can't be fixed, or in parentheses, can't be fixed, versus lack of training. Some people can't process high stress at speed. So, one, you can fix this. Stop talking about the processing shit. That is some overemphasized like crap in the train. Like that's the easy button. Oh, by processor speed, and then half the guys are saying, well, that's something you're born with or whatever, and guys will process differently. I get it that a lot of people can't react in stressful situations, but that's not a processing issue. That's an inoculation to stress, right? If anyone can remember, that's old enough, the first fist fight you had in 5th grade or 6th grade was completely different than the 10th fist fight you had, because you were inoculated to that level of stress, right? From my world, though, the very first target I went on was completely different than the 1,000th target, because I was more comfortable in that environment. I wasn't, as apprehensive or scared or nervous. You're inoculated to that. But we're also, I believe it is a training issue. But before you start putting a lot of emphasis into the cognitive processing or processor speed, any of that shit in training, make sure that you can deliver with the tool that you're going to use. Like,
right.
That's it, because if you can get that to run in the background, right? If you think you've got, say your processing speed is $1 bill, and it's taking you 99 pennies to make a shot that only leaves 1 penny left over to read the situation. You want that reversed, where I can make that shot. It's only going to cost me a nickel to make that shot, and now I've got 95 pennies that I can commit to understanding the situation and watch it unfold and make decisions in that situation. Right? I don't buy this. Like, I don't.
No, so it's a processing thing, but like you said, it's an inoculation thing, and it's reps. And I think it proves time and time again, there are thousands and thousands of SWAT guys across this country who have lots and lots of reps of entering a house, processing hallways, entering rooms with grandma in it, kids in it, dealing with it, and not shooting them, and doing a really good job at it. And they can also go to the range and not be able to deliver even a barely acceptable level of performance when it comes to shooting. So that they've got the processing part, but the shooting part is still lacking. And in the end, that's where the problem lies. So when people put the stress part of it on an LE shooting, an unexpected, that's just like an unexpected. If someone were to break my window behind me and start firing a gun at me, I would probably duck and freak out a little bit, right? I'm not gonna be like, well, I'm gonna get you, like, because it's unexpected, right? But a lot of those are when they're moving into a situation aware of the at least general direction of where the problem is. But when the problem still happens, there's a panic. There's that, oh my God. But I think a lot of that is caused by your little brain going, we aren't really good at this shit, dude. And it's probably a bad thing. Like, that's more stressful than the actual violence. The person shooting at him is the known inability to actually make a difference in it.
Right. And you're the example of the SWAT guys with a lot of entries, and they're very good at processing and reading the situation. That's one part, but you can't train that. Like, we've got to extend the timeline out for so long to get those reps, to get the targets, the entries, and all of that stuff. But you can apply stress in a lot of different ways outside of just like physical workout stress on the range, right? You can apply performance stress in terms of layering skills. We can apply a time-based stress. We can apply an accuracy-based stress. We can apply all three of them, right? And if you're smart about how you're training, then it's very easy to build up to a level where you're just comfortable operating in a very high frequency environment on the range, that when you go to an entry, any delivery of force that you have to do is going to be very, very, very easy, or it should be, because what you're doing on the range is a level that you don't have to do that at. Does that make sense? Like,
absolutely.
You get used to, hey, this is how I operate in training, and then you keep that right in your head, right? There's training strategies that I use for myself that are not engagement sequences. It's not how I would engage a target, but I'm doing it to see what can I learn to recognize with what I'm feeling if I'm shooting my rifle, what I'm feeling in my rifle, what I'm seeing in terms of dot tracking pattern. The target confirms it when I'm able to go look at it. But I want all that work to be done if I'm shooting my rifle really aggressively at 50 yards. I don't want to go up to the target and be surprised about anything.
No, it should be known. And that recognition, I think, that's the training part, where when you push yourself, you learn how to recognize. And I think my weakest shooting element right now is long range. I'm learning how to do that well. And what is easier now for me is, because it's so new, is now I'm recognizing when I'm not in an appropriate position. When I put a bag up and I got behind the gun, I can much quicker now realize I am not my natural point aim's off. I'm screwed up here. I can get myself fixed now before I deliver the shots. And in an actual engagement, the ability to see your dot behaving in a way that isn't what your brain is used to, because it is so automatic, gives you the ability right there to correct it on the spot. I think we talked about it on the range one time. We're like, did you see that happening? I'm like, yeah, shit started getting low. You're like, well, why didn't you fix it? Because I'm a fucking idiot. I don't know. And then now I pay attention. So now when I don't, if I shoot, 2 on this target here at 50 yards, I run over here and I engage a target at 35 yards. If I'm disconnected from the gun and I go to shoot again and I don't feel the pressure in my shoulder, I know I'm not connected, and I'll take the half second to load that thing up before I send the rounds. That's the stuff I'm actually wanting to feel or wanting to recognize before I shoot. So guys should be, if you train hard enough, you start to recognize when the gun comes up and there's no dot and the dude's at 20 yards, you're going to have problems with accuracy, right? Yeah. And you come up here and it's like, find it, fix it, then press the shots that actually put the bullets where you want them. And the whole thing will still be over quicker than if you just started sending bullets downrange.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, no, it's hope firing is never going to be the answer. I hope it hits them.
I hope it hits them.
Anybody, I think, that has shot, small pieces of steel at distance does that, where you'll find yourself, as soon as the accuracy is there, but you apply a time metric, you'll pull the trigger more times where you recognize it's just not there. And then if you go back and look at it, okay, I'm trying to hit a 8-inch disc at 40 yards, and I took 4 extra shots, and that was this time. If I took half that time just to refine my my aiming scheme, it would be significantly faster.
Yeah. But we don't. I think that's a great word for it, hope firing. Like, well, I'm looking at the target and my gun's pointed in its general direction. I'm just going to send them with no confirmation whatsoever that your sights and your gun are telling you that you're actually going to get a hit. And that recognition of it is, it's not a heavy lift. Like that's kind of one of the phrases we use, right? I don't think it's too heavy of a lift to try to convince dudes to say, hey, listen, I know it's taking more time, and I get it that it's scary that you're being shot at, but put the dot on the guy, put the sights, get the confirmation level you need, and it'll all be over sooner. You're just going to make it last longer. And it's that, how do we get that stress inoculation? Again, it goes to the training part. Like, I think law enforcement training, a guy had asked me this question last week, has law enforcement training gotten worse, or has it gotten better, but the people are worse? And I said, it's a mix. I think the training has always been adequate for what a good student who can actually take it all in and apply it can then use. It's always been adequate for them. It's not good enough to really reinforce why certain things are so important. There's no movement. Like, it's great at marksmanship training. They could put everybody in an NRA competition and most cops could shoot a halfway decent score. But again, that's marksmanship competition. It's not actually using a gun. It's shooting paper. So I think we're missing all those parts.
Yeah, no, I agree. I hear the argument all the time where it's, well, it's a different candidate and things like that. I think that's an old guy mentality, and I know I'm probably guilty of it. Where, oh no, it was my generation was better, and no, it's all the same shit. You just probably, when you're wrapped up in it at that level, you don't recognize, that you were probably doing the same thing. But now, you're sitting in your position with a lot of experience, a lot of real world experience, a lot of training experience, competitive experience. And now you're looking at everybody through a different lens than when you were at that level, kind of looking around at the same
thinking lens. I was pretty good because I was the best shooter in the academy. Like, look at me. Look what I did. And then now realizing I sucked.
And there was a good comment in here where a guy said he was spent a lot of time. He's retired, but spent a lot of time on well over a decade on a full-time team that was very busy. Arrogantly thought that he could run the gun at a subconscious level, and then realized that he didn't know what subconscious really was. And I think that's where, getting outside of the comfort zone in training and keeping evolving, especially if you're fortunate enough to be on a full-time team or a very busy department where you, like your department, where you have access to training and stuff, is you've got to keep evolving. But you've said it before, I know, on some of these lives, you'll do the post-shooting like debriefings, and it's after that, when they've gotten away with it and the outcome wasn't very good for them, that now they're very interested in training.
Yeah, like 100%. Like, I'm lucky. Like, guys, like, they're like, I'm lucky to be alive. Is there anything I can do to get better at this? And it's not too late, right? It's too late for that first one. And, by the grace of God or whatever you want to believe happened, you just didn't get dead. And you won, right? Air quotes, won. Now they want to know. But then this is the frustration I have. I think it's one that you share. The interest becomes very high. I want to get better. Oh my God, almost got killed. I want to get better at it. Hey, here, do this, do this, do this. Fuck yeah, I am going to. It's getting a little bit hard, and I'll be fine. And it drops right back off. The commitment to doing it just goes wrong, and it falls right back, and it gets back to that comfortable level where it's like, oh, I think I'll be okay. I practiced for a month straight.
I think commitment's fleeting. Enthusiasm's fleeting. What a lot of people don't have for this is the discipline to do it.
Yeah.
Right. Especially to do it when it's not going the way they want. Right. Like, you're in a slump or initially, if you start training, especially you see it in the practical world, a big gain initially. And then as the gains get smaller and smaller and smaller to where they're like infinitesimal gains that you don't really see, that you get depressed. You get like, fuck, why am I doing this? I mean, I can't tell you how many times I think about that, like dealing with the training world. where you're just like, this is a fucking massive waste of time. Like, I feel like I say the same thing over and over and over again. You know, but that's where I think the discipline in training has to kick in. And then you have to find those, you know, the enthusiasm kicks up. You have to get like Dave Acosta, fuck you, man. But you have to like get, you know, then you like reinvigorate your motivation. So enthusiasm goes through the roof. And that just takes, you know, you have to be consistently disciplined to do it over and over and over again from the training side.
I mean, it's easier said than done, right? We've had the discussion about that. It's really not. It's just as easily done. We just getting people to understand it it's driving me nuts. That's why I kind of wanted to hit this thing you gave is about weapons handling in general, the way we're handling our guns in public and out in society. And there's a difference between that, like professional, casual, like you're so confident and good at it that you're able to do things and move around with a gun that looks effortless versus reckless, right? You're not being reckless with it, but you're very in control of it. You should always be completely in control of it. And the fact that it gets in a cop's hand, and this is another big training problem, it's would there be benefit for dudes in the room, guys that watch this later, Matt, your opinion, for just carrying a gun around for a little while, like not in your holster, just put it in your hand and go fucking walk around for like an hour with the thing in your hand and just do so safely. Unload it, make it all safe for the internet nerds. But having the gun in their hand and actually doing things with it makes it less foreign. So when it is in their hand, it's like, crap, this isn't what I do every day, right? And I've old cops say, I never had to draw my gun. Well, I don't know where the fuck you worked, but the guys got their guns out every single night. But it isn't all night, right? It's coming out a little, and then they'll do a canine search, and it's like, oh, crap, now I've got a gun in my hand for 45 minutes, a couple hours, and I'm not used to having it in my hand. What difference does that make? And do they walk around like this the whole time, or do they eventually get to the point where they're like, fuck this thing, and stick it in their holster? I don't know, man. I just kind of wanted to rant a little bit on gun handling today, but I think we've hit some good topics.
Yeah, I think you're right. You can't spend time, you know, with the gun in your hand. You know, I know it sounds weird sitting there, magazine full of dummy rounds, drop it, insert it, sight picture, whatever, aim at the TV, aim at that amount of time. You know, I think the best guys in the world spend a significant amount of time, a significant part of the day with a pistol or rifle, right? Just being familiar with it. It doesn't always have to be like this concerted effort practice. You need that. You should be getting that, you know, daily. And I will say for a lot of people doing it daily, like I'll tell you, like for me, I don't dry fire every day because there's days where I'm working or traveling where I don't have access to a gun, right? But every day that I have access to a gun, I'm doing something with it, right? And for me, a lot of it is concerted, you know, training sequences, whether it's dry fire or whatever. And it's boring, you know, but what I've seen over time is you get really good at very basic rudimentary things that for people are difficult, and then you move on to other stuff, right? But that's where too, I think social media fucks it up. You watch somebody's dry fire video and they're just fucking whipping a gun around. So fucking, it's like, cool, that looks cool, right? You see guys doing designated target drill where you're watching how fast they're moving the gun, and I'm like that's pretty good, but like I can't see what you're seeing. I know for me, I cannot move the gun that fast and objectively assess what's happening.
Yeah.
So
we're getting close to the end. Can we hit that one? Do you mind real quick? When we I think we had talked about it on live before. I know I've gotten questions about it before when we talked about the speed of reality, right? Versus the speed of training. This is my take. The benefit for training at speed and pushing to failure and shooting deltas and mics is figuring out then how to make it work the right way. I am not, and it was also brought up in I think a live that you did with Scott and I don't remember who else was on there. It might have been Donovan. Talking about the reason for .25 splits. I might as well jump into this one, right? And force science and what they all mean. You guys are it's being used wrong. Those times and those things were designed to show how an engagement can turn from a frontal engagement to people being shot in the back, or people dropping a gun and no longer being a threat, but rounds are still being sent. There's an acceptable window of human performance that's there, and I don't think a lot of guys understand how to do it. At least what I'm saying, or what I took from when we talked about the speed of reality and engagement, is no one's saying you need to shoot at a 17 split to have a successful engagement. You may shoot at half-second splits. It's when it's an engagement, when you break down your training and you go, okay, now I want to shoot it at match mode, right? Or I need to perform. Most things are going to be slower, but they're going to be more accurate even. The ability to move through the stage should be just as fast, but the accuracy portion of it is going to be at a confirmation level that guarantees you get what you want. Or if you're willing to accept a Charlie, that's even fine. But I still don't see a lot of matches with brand new people shooting them where there's a lot of mics. And these are newer people running around a stage. They may be going slower, but they're putting rounds on the paper. So the whole idea of how you cannot shoot faster than this is flawed. You can shoot faster than that. If a target is right in front of you, you can shoot at as fast as that gun will cycle. But when the behavior of the target changes, you have to recognize that and stop it. And people will try to put very precise metrics on it, and they don't exist. The 2.5 to 0.30 window is where the ability of most people lies in recognizing it. And then stopping it goes to the training of, hey, okay, but he's falling. He could be falling. You could still be shooting and be correct. You can recognize he's falling, stop shooting, recognize he still needs to be a shot, and then shoot some more. So yeah. I don't like people thinking about that. But as far as the speed of reality and the speed of engagement, would you agree that confirmation 2 and 1, where you have an effective sights on a target that needs to be engaged, can be shot as fast as those things remain? As long as the target is giving me the right levels of confirmation, I can shoot it as fast as that does not change.
Yeah. Confirmation 2 and 3.
Yep.
Yeah, and that goes into, we all say it differently, shooting your vision. When it's there, you can continue to engage, right? And as the attitude of the target changes, that doesn't necessarily mean your splits change. It just means your intended point of aim needs to change,
yes,
which is impossible to do if you're staring at the dot or you're staring at the front sight,
yep,
which opens up a whole nother can of like training things that you have to learn to do. If you talk about like, the gunfighting side of it. But no, I agree. Like the training, if I want to deliver 3-0 splits as an engagement strategy, 3-0, 3-5, which I think is very acceptable, that's not the limitation on the range.
No.
I do that by being very, very good at shooting, 17s, 18s, 20s with a lot of control and a lot of accountability. And then that gets into like on the range, we're doing shit that's faster than real life. That's not the real life speed, right? It's not to say there aren't times where, depending on how you read a situation, maybe a sub-second draw is required for you to be successful. But then we start talking about concepts like stealing time. How am I going to steal that time? And shit, we could go down a rabbit hole for hours on that.
Yeah, maybe we'll hit that another time. But yeah, like just to finish it up, that we talked about like speed in training. If all you ever do is shoot half-second, 1-second splits and bullseyes, 30s are going to feel really fast. When you shoot within control at 17s and 20s, 30s are like ultra precision work. That's stacking headbox alphas at 10 yards, right? Just, and it becomes easy. And that's kind of, I think, we hope the level guys get to, is when they recognize I am in control of the gun, I have an appropriate sight picture for it, and I do have a threat, and I'm running this gun at a pace that none of this changes, and I'm not worried about it changing. It's not going to get worse. Yep. This is easy time right here. But,
I agree, man.
But I appreciate you jumping on. Hopefully that didn't get confusing in the beginning for you guys. I'll post this thing up. If anybody has any questions, disagreements, or thoughts on it, hit me up. Matt, you got anything?
No, man. Thanks for having me on, Chris.
Well, take care, buddy. I'll see you
later.